Hello, Glenn. I'm very glad to meet you on this podcast. Maybe you can tell our audience about yourself. What are you doing? How did you start?
So I guess the best place to start would be when I graduated college back in 2011. But I went to the college in Jersey, graduated in 2011 with a math teaching degree. And much like how you would usually do with a teaching degree, you would look in the job market. You would look at schools, see who was hiring. A lot of the interviews that I had, schools were hiring in district, they were hiring other candidates, and I just felt discouraged a little bit by that. But I still wanted to teach. I still wanted to tutor. I wanted to do it in some capacity. So I was doing that on the side until about 2015, and I met a family. They own an auto dealership here in Wall. Very nice family. And it was funny because when I was working with them, they're like, oh, we're going to refer you to other clients or, other families, other parents, and your business is going to explode. I'm like, okay, well, actions mean louder than words, right? I wasn't buying it initially, but they weren't kidding. It got to a point where I was able to leave a full time job that I had at the time to pursue tutoring full time. And this was back when I would make house calls and go from one person's house to the next and really just grind morning to night. 5, 6 days a week was just doing that. And I realized it got to a point that, maybe I could just have a location. Maybe I could have a spot where everybody comes to instead of driving around and figuring all that out, right? It was confidence in, can people come to me? And that confidence was a resounding yes. I think I probably lost one person. Um, and I had my own location for a while. And fast forward to about a year and a half, 2 years ago, decided to bring on some office staff. I now have a team of how many tutors? I think 11 or 12 part time tutors under me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty cool to see something where you were the only one doing it, right? You were the one man shop just running everything to now where things are starting to get streamlined. I feel like a chicken with no head sometimes, Mike. I really do. I just feel like everything looks great, and then behind the scenes is just a total mess. But I'm told that it does run relatively smoothly, so we must be doing something right. But it's just really exciting. It's awesome to see something that just started as a side hustle that has now become a successful business here in Wall.
So now you're managing the whole team, right?
Mhm.
Maybe you can tell me more about how did you come from just tutoring to managing the whole team? Because for me, it's two separate tasks, right?
Yes, absolutely. I think what's most difficult about it is knowing that you can delegate things,
Mm-hmm.
that everything doesn't have to be done yourself. That's the biggest challenge and the biggest hurdle that I have. A lot of it was confidence, not feeling that, oh, I could just delegate this to another tutor or I could delegate this task to an office staff member, right?
Mm-hmm.
And once I started doing that, that was a lot easier. And then I felt happier. And I just felt like I didn't have all this overwhelming stress. I'm able to just delegate things. In terms of leading, I am a person that doesn't believe in anything with yelling at staff members or anything like that. That's not the type of boss I am. I think I'm very easygoing. I will let you know if I'm disappointed in something or say that something's not right. Like, hey, what can we do moving forward to fix this because this keeps happening, right? And
Mm-hmm.
what I don't want it to happen. So, what can we do moving forward so we can take the necessary steps? And I think what's good about that approach is it gives other team members, whether office staff or tutors, to brainstorm their own approach to it. Like, oh, I could do this to fix it
Yeah,
moving
yeah.
forward. So, yeah, to answer your question, I think it's just being, I think my approach would be firm but flexible. I think flexible in helping people out and catering to their needs, but then also firm on a couple of processes so this way everything's in order.
Wow, that sounds great. Maybe you can tell more about how did you even come to this side hustle? Because for me, it's two separate things. Teaching people and running it as this whole separate business. Maybe you can talk more about this transition.
Yeah, there's definitely a transition period. So the transition period occurred. I had a full-time job. I was just working at an office, working and combing through Excel documents. But part-time, I loved teaching. And I always had
Hmm.
this feeling like whenever I left that full-time job, I was so excited to teach and tutor. And I
Okay.
think you get to a point where you have so many students that you can do it in the short term. You could work a full time job and work with all these students in the short term, but it's not sustainable long term. And I
Okay.
was
Okay.
realizing that the amount of money I was making tutoring per hour at least was a lot more than the office job. So I got to a point where it's like, all right, what is the risk reward on this? Does it make sense to leave this job and then just pursue this full time? And it did.
Hmm.
So I think I got to a point where I was just able to pursue the tutoring full time. Um, I'm a numbers person, so I always have to make sure it makes sense financially to make a decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I eventually just got to a point where I was able to pursue it full time.
Was it difficult for you to find the very first client?
Um, yeah, it's a really good question. Back in 2014 and 2015, I was using this online platform called Wyzant, where people could find tutors, and I was just going through that platform just to work with students.
Hmm.
And then once I had that one family that wanted to refer me, I decided, you know what, I'm not going to use this platform anymore because one, they're taking a certain percentage.
Yeah.
And two, those clients directly didn't come from Wyzant. So I felt there was no need to continue to work through that platform. And then I just decided to strictly through word of mouth. That's really how it grew. It was
Right.
really referral based. Nowadays, it's a little more traditional with their marketing efforts in addition to word of mouth.
Hmm.
So we advertise in a couple of local magazines. We're always looking in Facebook groups to see who it is that needs tutoring or needs help with SAT prep or Algebra 1 tutoring, right?
Hmm.
We're looking through there, and we've gotten a couple students that way too. But I think our most successful way to gain clients is word of mouth because you already have that validation.
Yeah.
You already have the validation from somebody else that, hey, MST tutoring is great. Here are the reasons why. So I can almost skip that part of the consultation because I know they're already interested.
Hmm.
So those are the best type of clients to get. Now, there's nothing wrong with clients that you're getting from online advertising or through Facebook groups. You have a little bit more legwork involved. But yeah, referral based clients are the best.
You already talked about some challenges on the way, or I think you talked about the biggest challenge in transitioning from just tutoring to managing teams. What was in your whole history the biggest challenge for you?
That's a really good question. Um, I think the biggest challenge was confidence.
Hmm.
When you start out a business, are you confident that people are going to be interested in your product
Yeah.
or your service that you offer? Are they going to buy into it? And then when you have that repeated validation that it's working, and as you get more clients, you basically know, hey, I am doing a great job. Like this is working. Because I think sometimes when you have a service-based business, it's sometimes awkward to ask after every session, oh, how did the session go? How did I do? Right?
Hmm.
You can't necessarily say that, but you can kind of read verbal cues and nonverbal communication that somebody's really getting something out of the tutoring. Um, I really think it was confidence and then knowing that you can do something. I feel like if you have confidence, you have a belief that you can achieve something, then you can create action items from that to achieve that goal.
Great. So it wasn't less an external challenge, but more an internal in yourself.
Yeah, there are external factors. Sometimes when you start a business, you have sometimes people may think, well, you're leaving a job and you're starting a full-time business. I mean, what's your fallback plan, right?
Hmm.
What's your option? You have external factors that most certainly impact that. But as you start to grow your business and you get more and more clients, a lot of that noise tends to go away because
Hmm.
first of all, others are seeing what you're doing, and B, you're so focused on your own success and your own drive that
Yeah,
you're not having to focus on those external factors.
great. Speaking of taking some successes, what was maybe your biggest success in your career? Or how do you even define a success for yourself in what you're doing?
It's really funny you say that. There was a couple of Sundays ago where we had the most amount of sessions that we've had ever. Like it was,
Mm-hmm.
we set a new record. And a lot of people are thinking, oh man, you had to work on a Sunday? That must have been rough. But no, I was really excited to be here.
Mm-hmm.
I think what success can be defined at is in that instance when you're able to set a goal. You see all these students that are coming in that you're working with, and you're at your center, and you have all these rooms where other tutors are using it. And then I'm even tutoring a couple of students. That feels like a definition of success because you're happy with what you're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
The money is relative. Does it fit your lifestyle? Does it fit your budget? I mean, you could have a business that's a multi-million dollar business, but is that truly defined as success if you absolutely hate doing it? Right. So
Yeah.
I think success is certainly relative. Now, is it great to make that much money? Absolutely. There's no question. No question at all. Right. But if you're able to have a profitable business, that's the key word here,
Mm-hmm.
profitable, and you love what you do, I think that is the definition of success.
That's great that you're saying that, because I think a lot of young people, especially young entrepreneurs, focus on these external factors first to get some money. Were there moments in your life where you were more focused on these external factors, were more struggling on the external side?
I would say certainly during COVID,
Mm-hmm.
March 2020, the world shut down.
Yeah.
um, Everything kind of stopped, right? Even a lot of families are uncertain. Can I afford tutoring? Can I still pay tutoring? And
Mm-hmm.
they quickly discovered that, well, regardless of whether or not I can afford it, I need to have my son or daughter get some help
Yeah.
because all the schools went virtual at that point, and a lot of schools were having to adjust on the fly with how to best approach that. Thankfully, you have state mandated or government mandated programs such as PPP and idle grants that most certainly helped out businesses, ours included. I definitely would have to say, that was a huge factor in helping us out. Um, but I think that was probably one of the external factors that really just was a rough time to get through. At a certain point, too, I was experiencing entrepreneurial burnout because
Mm-hmm.
of having to not only run the business still solely at that point, but also having to worry about all these other things that are going on outside of the world. And I realized that through that burnout, that I still do love what I do, but it has to be done differently. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what prompted the change to bring on a lot more staff members.
Oh, that's interesting, because the whole time you talked about COVID, I thought it's just changed from local teaching, local tutoring to an online tutoring. But what you're saying, you have to bring a lot more stuff in it, like a lot more people, like human resources.
Mm. Yeah, it was just a really, I think a lot of, not just business owners who are tutoring, but I think a lot of teachers during that time just really struggled.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was evident that we're switching to what was at the time a new normal. And it was just difficult for people to adjust. It was very strange to just work solely from home. I mean, granted, it was great to be around my dog and, and stay home more, but it definitely was a change.
Crazy. Did you already tutor before COVID online, or was it also a switch for you?
I tutored a little bit before online, but I felt like I really didn't have a handle on what was the best approach.
Mm-hmm.
During COVID, I felt like I eventually discovered a system that worked. I was using Zoom, and what I would do is I would have my computer, much like I
Mm-hmm.
have now, and I would screen share an iPad to the computer. And then students could see exactly what I was writing. I would use applications on the iPad, such as Notability, or good notes, depending on the preference of the student or what was deemed appropriate for the time. And I still use that to this day. So we still work
Mm-hmm.
with some students virtually, and it works. It's almost as if not exactly the effectiveness of an in-person session.
If you say it's almost not there are almost no difference, as far as I can understand, what are the differences then?
I think one of the biggest differences that you get from virtual tutoring versus in-person tutoring is picking more so up on the nonverbal communication,
Mm-hmm.
right? A student can say that they understand something, but if it's an in-person session, I can just read their body language
Yeah.
and quickly determine that, hey, we need to continue to review this because you may not be confident on this, right? In virtual sessions, it's a little bit more difficult to pick up on that.
Okay, so you also use a lot of psychology, like body language reading, while you're tutoring. What would be, just out of curiosity, what would be the signs that tell you that this person doesn't understand what you're talking about?
I've seen a couple of them. The classic one is the deer in headlights look, just looking at the
Mm-hmm.
paper and not really sure where to begin or to start. Um, it's funny. I'm going to go back to this. So earlier we discussed confidence in yourself.
Yeah.
So a lot of students in high school have a very different mentality or mindset than you or I,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're a lot more concerned about external factors and their peers. So that means that they're much more likely to second guess themselves, even
Mm-hmm.
though they really do know the approach.
Mm-hmm.
With some of my students, I'll usually ask them, how do we solve this problem, just to see as a litmus test? And they'll just almost look at it and just say, I don't know. And then as soon as we do the first step, they can take over the rest of the problem. And then they feel good about it, right?
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to see that a lot of students who go from I don't know or I don't have any idea to actually carrying through the
Mm-hmm.
steps. And that builds confidence. And then that confidence can be translated to successful classroom performance.
Mm. Was it also the challenge before COVID? Did or did it got worse during COVID? Because I can imagine, because of this social isolation, it would be more awkward to even speak about yourself or speak your voice.
Um, I think if I'm understanding the question correctly, during COVID, it was certainly challenging because a lot of students miss the day-to-day interaction with their peers, right? So they
Mm-hmm.
missed
Yes.
that period of time, right? And a lot of students, unfortunately, resorted to using applications such as Photomath or homework helpers just to get the assignment done. What
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing now is a lot of students who are juniors or seniors, their foundations from seventh or eighth grade are severely missing. So I'm finding that now when we're tutoring somebody in 11th grade, we not only have to cover that material for what they're currently working on, but then I may have to review how to add and subtract positive and negative numbers while in that problem. So
Okay.
these are additional challenges, and that's a seventh or eighth grade topic that you're
Yeah.
looking at, right? So that creates an additional challenge, an additional hurdle that you have to overcome. But looking at the glass half full, when you're able to tutor in both those spaces and the student's able to understand it better moving forward, that's
Mm-hmm.
very rewarding,
Yeah.
right? There's a lot to be said that, oh my gosh, not only did I help them in their current material, but they learned something from seventh or eighth grade during COVID that they weren't, fully aware of how it worked.
Mm-hmm. I've, I have a question about the students that you're tutoring.
Absolutely.
What kind of students are, how do I say it correctly, the most needed of tutoring? Like, what kind of students needs your tutoring the most?
Students who I can speak for the math side of things as because we do work with science courses, but I'm limited in the science courses that I personally tutor. But at least on the math side of things, somebody who's lacking or just is not feeling confident in either free algebra, algebra one, or geometry. And I'm going to couple that with students who don't know how to use the best use of their time. So, perfect example is we work with some students that will say, "Hey, I have about 3 or 4 hours of homework." But then we quickly discover that as we're going through the problems, there's an easier, more effective way to go through the homework that's cutting down on the amount of time that they're doing the work. And that has benefits that extend to multiple facets of your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now you're getting to bed at an earlier hour, you're getting improved sleep, and then improved sleep improves your mental and emotional well being the next day, right? So even just a little tweak can have many profound effects moving forward. I would say the students who would probably need our services the most are students that either are lacking a foundation in certain courses or students who are looking to get ahead because they're restricted by their current curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, let's say a student wants to take the SAT in the fall of their junior year, but they're not enrolled in Algebra 2. So, usually take the SAT. It's advisable for students to have completed a course of Algebra 2 or equivalent
Mm-hmm.
before taking it to the best of your ability. So, sometimes what we'll do is we'll work with students over the summer, give them an Algebra 2 crash course, while also concurrently going over the topics or the problems that they would see on an SAT.
Mm-hmm.
So this way, if they choose to take it in October, November, December, they're not feeling like, oh my gosh, I have to wait until the end of junior year to take the SAT. And now I only have summer of senior year and the first 2 months of senior year to take this test, right? That's a common pitfall a lot of these students run into, especially in the college preparatory track. So our goal is to speed or accelerate that process up.
Mm-hmm.
So you're getting the testing done junior year, so by your senior year, you're worried predominantly about college applications.
You talked about you talk a lot about this methodical part of your job also, that a little tweak in it can accelerate the work immensely. Do you think it's just not taught at school, or the students are just lazy and don't want to learn this stuff?
I wouldn't necessarily say that the students are lazy or lack the wherewithal to do it. I think it's more so the space of either they haven't learned it yet, so they don't know how to do it,
Mm-hmm.
or they're just not sure how to do it, right? I mean, those are really the two schools of thought that I've seen where if a student doesn't know how to effectively manage their time, it's usually because they've never been shown how to do it, or they've just don't even know where to begin. They just don't know how do I even start by managing my time? Do I use a planner? Do I use an online scheduling system? Do I use Gmail? Do I use Microsoft Office and what they have? It's just it's really tough for students to get organized without being shown the ropes. I hope that
Mm-hmm.
answers your question.
Yeah.
So
So they also have a lot of issues, a lot of problems with organizing because of this multitude of options that they're provided. And do you think that what you're doing, or in your services, there's something special that school doesn't provide for them? Let if we're speaking solely about methodical part.
I think what our tutoring center offers, what a traditional school doesn't offer, is first and foremost individualized instruction.
Mm-hmm.
So instruction, at least on the curriculum side of things, that's geared or catered towards that student's unique learning needs. All too often, we see a program such as a Huntington or a Mathnasium, which do have their merits. But what happens is students are run through a predefined curriculum that may not necessarily address what they currently need help in. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how we're different. We save all the resources from all the schools that we've worked with students on. So we keep a running tab of previous exam review sheets, exercises, and even the books that a lot of the schools use. So this way we can match up exactly what we have to what the students are looking for. And a lot of these other brick and mortar locations don't offer that. They don't have that type of service. So I think that's what separates us from other places. On the test prep side of things, we follow a little bit more of a predetermined curriculum, but again, it really depends on the student's needs. And when we say that, it depends on their baseline test that they take with us, whether it's an SAT or an ACT. And then we cater the preparation to the types of
Hmm.
questions that a student needs help on the most. So that's where the individualized test prep comes from.
Interesting. Would you say there were some moments for you in school where you needed a tutoring and didn't get it?
That's a really good question. Yes, I think back to freshman year in high school. I was taking an honors geometry course, and I somehow barely skated by. I got the minimum grade that you needed to qualify for honors algebra 2, which was an 83. So that's what I got. I really struggled with learning proofs, how to write them, and even when I stayed for extra help, the material just did not click for me. So I feel like I could have really used a tutor in that class. Yeah, that's the class that definitely stands out the most to me. And it's funnily enough, that's one of my favorite classes to now teach.
Why is it
And
so?
a lot of students, yeah, and a lot of students will say, "Oh my gosh, I hate writing proofs. This is terrible." And I always remind them of the story that I had, and then the appreciation that I have for it, looking back on it years later, because now it's crystal clear. Now it makes all the sense in the world. But 15 years old, freshman in high school, doesn't make as much sense.
Hmm. What was the biggest challenge in that time with this subject?
With geometry, I think it was a lot more memorization, not memorization, but learning and understanding certain formulas, theorems, how to write a proof, which is really basically a proof is think of it as writing a set of directions, right? Let's say if you want to write a recipe, you have to write down each and every step and what's required, right? A proof is basically that in mathematics, where you have to start with step one. How do you get to your starting point? To how do you get to your end goal? And what
Hmm.
are all the steps that it takes? We think of math, we think of algebra, we think of adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing numbers, much like how we did in grammar or middle school. Um, but geometry is just really a different beast. It elicits a higher level thinking that once you take the course, you really don't use it again until you're in college if you're pursuing a mathematics degree. And I think that's another pitfall that I've seen is when I was in college, I was initially struggling with the higher level maths. But once I kind of thought back to my experience with geometry, I got a college tutor and that made all the difference. That really did.
Did I understood correctly that you yourself got a tutor in the college?
In college, yes.
Yeah.
I used to do that for a lot of my math courses that because it was a free service offered by by
Hmm.
the college, a peer tutor. So I would just take advantage of it. And I felt it was very beneficial.
How would they help you?
I think with sometimes with classes that you take in college, you learn so much material in such a short amount of time.
Hmm.
So what that extra tutoring hour does, it's almost like an additional hour where things are just being retaught to you,
Oh,
but in a
hmm.
different way that
Hmm.
might make more sense. Sometimes it takes a different way of explaining things, and then all of a sudden you have the aha moment or it clicks. And that's what I found was highly beneficial. Having another person explain the material. Maybe there was a question that I had on the homework that I got part of the answer, but I wasn't able to get to the end. That's where the tutoring really helped.
So it was for you. It was just additional time and a bit a different approach at this problem that helped you to move forward. Is that
Absolutely. Yeah,
is that something that you use now also for your students?
most certainly. What I try to do too, which I also ask all my tutors to do, is I want to always look through their notes and see how a teacher approaches a certain problem because we all know, let's say, how to add, subtract, multiply, or divide. for instance,
Mm-hmm.
but there might be a specific way that the teacher wants it done, or maybe the way that you or me have learned that material is different than how the students learned it. So you have to be able to cater your instruction to how the student has learned the material. And that's important, right? And that's a higher level skill because we could show you how to do something, but if it's different than what the student learns in class, then that can create a sense of a disconnect.
What was the kickstart for you? You said that somebody helped you to expand drastically. What was the key points that helped you to do this?
Well, that was mostly through referrals and recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, I really didn't have to do my own marketing at all. Now that we're already a larger tutoring service and we're looking to grow even more, we do resort to traditional marketing efforts. Um, but I think it was really just if you have a service or a good or an item that is going to bring in clientele and is going to bring in people, it's almost a sense of striking the iron is hot, right? So if
Mm-hmm.
you're working with a couple of families that are willing to refer you to others, or let's say you're working with a couple of clients that are willing to refer you to other people, it's really delivering on that service or good that you offer, and that can expand your business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Word of mouth is a very powerful referral tool. And especially in the tutoring industry, it can make or break your business. It really
Mm-hmm.
can.
How did you manage to keep up with such high quality so people refer you further and further?
I think it was learning when to say no. And
Mm-hmm.
as a business owner, when you first start, it's the honeymoon phase, right? You want to say yes to every customer, you want to accommodate every request, every demand, work all hours of the day and night, but eventually it catches up with you.
Mm-hmm.
It can't be sustained long term. So I think setting boundaries, learning when to say no, knowing that your time is valuable, and working with the clients or customers that you want to work with are all very healthy boundaries that I think a lot of entrepreneurs could set. And that can definitely help alleviate a lot of burnout. I don't like to use the word should because that means I'm telling somebody what to
Yeah.
do. I only like to tell people based on my experience what I can offer. And
Mm-hmm.
everybody's journey is different, right? That's
Yeah.
what separates myself from other business owners is every person's journey is different. But we do it for the same reasons. We do it because we want to find something that we love doing. And if we can make money while we're doing it, that's even better.
Yeah. What would you say now that you have many tutors who are working for you? How do you find people who can literally talk and whom you can trust to keep up with such a high quality?
That's a really good question. I've been very selective about who I bring on board. So I can usually tell now I've interviewed a lot of people. So I can usually tell in about 5 minutes whether you're going to be a viable candidate or not.
Yeah.
Now, of course, for the sake of being polite, I will not abruptly end the interview. I will carry it out in entirety. But I know pretty quickly if you're somebody that I can bring on. It's interesting. I actually mentioned this to somebody the other day. And let's say you have two candidates. Okay. Candidate A knows all their content knowledge inside and out, right? They know everything that they need to know about their material, but they don't have the best way to convey that information to others.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's take candidate B. Candidate B knows most of the material, not all, but most. But they can just resonate with the clientele, they can resonate with students, they have a personality. Every time I will take candidate B because
Mm-hmm.
you can teach them material, but I feel people skills and being able to convey to others is an innate trait.
How do you figure this out in a job interview? This ability to convey your story to other people.
Um, I get to know them as a person. I
Mm-hmm.
want to know what do they do outside of their professional career or their professional endeavors that they do. And I usually ask them to teach a sample lesson of about 5 to 10 minutes in length. So based on those two items, along with just how our conversation goes as a whole, I'm able to make a decision. Now, With the 5 or 10 minutes, I can usually tell after a couple of questions because I initially like to ask them how their day is going, and I like them to always tell them a little bit about themselves to me. Just what is it that makes you tick, and why are you interested in tutoring? What is it about tutoring that motivates you?
What would be, maybe it's a bit of secret. Okay,
Mhm.
ask something different. What was the best answer or the best motivation that you've had?
Oh, that's a good one. I have to think back on this. I can't remember specifically or exactly, but I have had instances of where interviewees have said it's really seeing that aha moment for students when something clicks. You
Mm-hmm.
get that non-verbal reaction that a student is, oh my gosh, it finally clicked. I got it. This makes so much sense because that's something that's priceless to really just capture that moment. When tutors mention that, I know that I've got a candidate that's definitely one that I should at least highly consider bringing on.
Why is that?
I think a lot of tutors will say, I just love teaching because I like to help others, or a response that seems it has all good intentions, but it could be a little generic.
Mm-hmm.
When tutors are able to convey how they can help others and what they get from that, that's a whole different level.
Yeah. So basically, if they can explain their why.
Yes, that's a very good way of saying it. Yes.
That's great. Maybe what would be the question that you would like to answer and that almost never is asking you
Would this be in regards to teaching or education, or more of as a whole?
for you personally? Maybe it's education, maybe it's business. What is the one question that nobody asks you and you would like to answer this?
Why do you like tutoring? Why do you like teaching? What is it about that? And these might be several questions, but they all address the same component. What is it about teaching or tutoring that motivates you to do what you do? And I haven't really been asked that question by parents, even during onboarding calls. And if somebody asked me that, I would be flattered to answer because I think that's what helps motivate me every day to keep doing what I'm doing. And knowing that if I could help even just one student each day,
Mm-hmm.
made a difference somehow, some way. You really have, right?
So this is your why.
That is correct.
Maybe because I'll be having several guests in the further days. What would be the question you would like to ask or to leave for the next guest?
Very good question. Um, how do you continue to stay motivated in your business?
Great.
Because you can start it initially, right? But what keeps you going a year, 5 years, 10 years from now? How do you continue to motivate yourself? That's what I would ask.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and
Absolutely.
I wish you a great day.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was been a pleasure talking with you, and it's always great to talk about things like this.
Thank you.